Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on a fishing reel that Kevin has sent in. This is an interesting one. This one looks in very nice condition. Even if you look at the reel seat, there's very little wear, if anything, on this. This is the Mitchell 307A. It's very similar in nature to the 306, except that it has the right-handed crank. Well, we're going to see how this reel was made. We're going to take it apart completely. We're going to service it, and we're going to make sure that it has a long run left in it. So the later editions, the A's, often came with these plastic bottom tightening caps for the handles, and they, quite honestly, the plastic threads have been a weak point with this this design. Well, we're going to take this apart completely. We'll show you how to service it, how it was made, and how to keep it running for a long time to come. And if you like these types of videos, then I would encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you do subscribe to my channel, please use the notification button. That will show you when I'm posting and what I'm posting. And today it's a vintage Mitchell reel. Tomorrow, well, it could be something else entirely. It could be a low-profile bait caster. It could be a trolling reel, or any of the above. Well, we just started by removing the exterior pieces, and as I mentioned, this is in beautiful condition. One even wonders if the reel has been used or how long it's been used. But we'll get inside this and we'll make sure that it is serviced completely. When you take your parts off, I recommend a parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container to keep track of those pieces and parts. And one of the differences on the 308A is the way that the rotor attaches to the main body. On the 306 early editions, it was by a little plastic nut that was actually removable with a coin. Well, not this one. This one's got a traditional nut there. And on the side plate, we're going to access that side plate by removing the screw. And this is, again, this is mirror image to what you would be doing on the 306. And I've done videos on the 306s. And I've thought a lot of times folks are going to search for the reel that they have, and well, if they don't, they search a 307 and it doesn't come up. A lot of times they think there's not a video out there that they can use to service their reel, and in fact it's just a mirror image edition. Well, we've got a couple of things going on here. Looks like that's the original greases in there. So again, a little bit of a shout out here about the reel itself and the condition of it, and also it looks like the way it was stored. So gravity does its work over time. Somehow this reel was probably stored this way because all of the greases have migrated to the top of that channel. You can see them all puddled up here. Well, to get started on this one, it's a rather simple design. You're going to remove this clip in the crosswind block. That clip is going to release the axle shaft. You can see the two holes in the axle shaft where that clip goes. We're going to wipe this down, make sure that it's nice and clean, and then we can remove that crosswind block. Take pictures. This is a good place to tell you to do that. It may seem that I move quickly and that I'm in disregard for how this thing was set up. That's not true. It's more of a matter of knowing how this thing goes back, where I have the memory now to say, okay, I know if I get stuck. I also know where to go for schematics and the like if I do get stuck. But that's not the reason for you to skip quickly. Take the time, take the pictures. Well, as I mentioned, we've got a little bit of grease puddled up here, so I'm going to take a cotton swab and see if I just can't remove that. Remove the other side. That's the coloration of it looks to be the original greases. And now we can come up top and we can remove this nut which is holding on the rotor. Now I like to keep my tools nice and close and handy, And I like to keep a set of deep sockets here because a lot of the times you'll have a rotor with a deep cup where you can't get that nut off without using the deep socket. So I would recommend that you do that. Once I break it, I like to take it off by hand. And we'll put that into the parts tray so we don't lose that. Picture time again. There is a washer that goes under that, and then we have the bowl itself. Well, as long as your bale is firing, which this one is nice and easy, and it's not dirty, you do not need to remove the bale wire. A lot of times folks will take this off, and then, well, that spring jumps out and they lose the ability to put the reel back together again, and they wind up on my desk here. I would just recommend to you that you do not need to do that. Notice this little slot in the rotor right here. There's a little slot. Well, there's a corresponding keyway right here. And I'm going to say at this point in this exercise, this reel's never been used. There's a corresponding keyway right here. It's going to fit in that slot. Pay particular attention to it, particularly if you have an older reel that has a lot of grease in that area. It's very easy to find that becomes disoriented or lost, and if it does, you'll have nothing to hold your rotor in place. It'll simply spin by itself. To get the pinion gear out now, we have to remove this strike ramp. There's a small screw. And then there's the ramp. Again, take the pictures. And then we have this pin. And this pin is what's holding the rotor in, the pinion gear. So you need to work that out. I'm just grabbing it with a micro pliers and a gentle twisting. I might be able to get my screwdriver under there now. I can. And that's the pin that holds your gear in place. And now your gear should come out. And this is a collar on this one. This is a bushing. It's a collar. It's not a bearing. And you have a washer underneath. Just going to set this aside for a moment. Under a normal service here, you're just going to make sure that it's all nice and clean. Of course, this one is, and there's no grease that's even been spread into the teeth there. We're going to go about re-lubricating this reel. To do that, I'm going to use a fishing reel grease. I'm going to use Penn's fishing reel grease. I'm going to make sure that we get a nice amount of grease onto the teeth. And I was probably too quick to put that grease onto the shaft here where that bushing is going to ride, because when I put the washer down, it's going to compress it all. It's that tight a fit. So now we'll put the grease back on, put the bushing back on, and we're going to go ahead, just set that into the parts tray so we don't lose that. Well, with those pieces out now, I want to flip my anti-reverse dog to the off position, get it out of the way as I move the main gear out. The main gear, again, we have a bushing in the back there. You want to make sure it's clean, and again, this one appears to be unused. So we're just going to mop off the older part of the greases. Here's a look inside for those of you that may be working on this, trying to set the anti-reverse dog. This is your anti-reverse dog. Beak is out here, runs around, sits on a pin, and then sits on this little lever. And then your spring attaches in that little groove on the side plate and to the groove inside the dog here. A little bit of grease on there. Just take that off for a moment. We'll put just a shot of oil on that anti-reverse dog. We'll clean the perimeter of the main gear. This does not get greased. This is actually the click ratchet that's going to be intersecting with the dog that we just showed you. That'll set that off for a stopping of the reel. And then we'll just kind of grease this up, put this back in. This reel always, to me, has been a very nice workhorse. By today's standards, it's a 60 size reel, which makes it good for boat, for pier, for casting from shore, surf fishing and the like. It's a very rugged reel, and it has, of course, stood the test of time. All right, a little bit of grease onto the teeth, grease onto the face, and we want to grease the back shaft here. And we can now insert that back in. And we can get set now for the reinstall. What we want to do next is we want to take our pinion gear that we've serviced, find a hole where that ramp goes, find the hole in the bushing, and just simply slide that in. Make sure that it's aligned properly. I'm kind of reversing the way that we took this out now. You want to find your tie-down pin. Make sure that that's seated all the way in here. You got to put the pin back in. And we have that ramp and screw again. This is where that picture helps if you've got disoriented, and also is where your trying to get this little pin. It doesn't seem like I can do that. Where your parts tray helps, because a piece like this is easy to lose. I'm going to take a micro screwdriver, put a little bit of grease onto that. Just trying to get something to hold this small screw while I set this up. The reason for that is this ramp is not a flat piece. It's a ramp. It goes up, and when you go to seat this, it's not flat, so it's kind of hard to hold and get the screw in, but we're doing just fine here with this. Well, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, and you want to leave that question in the comment section, I will try to answer that for you. Well, next up is that little keyway. This is always fun, because if you lose this one, not only will your rotor spin out of control, but well, you're going to have a hard time finding a replacement. So just be careful. Sometimes I've actually had people tell me that they work doing this one in the install inside of a plastic bag. The reason for that is if they drop it, it falls into the bag rather than falling onto the floor or some other place where it's hard to locate. With that pin in, find the notch in your rotor, center both of those and bring it down, and we can go to our tray. We have that washer, and this one came off in a counterclockwise manner, so it's going to go back on clockwise. And we want to take the deep socket, reverse the throw on the ratchet, bring that in and tighten that down. There you go. And at this point you can spin it to make sure everything is working well, which it is. I'm just going to spin it so that I get this slot for your crosswind block, kind of about midway. A little bit of oil and grease onto the crosswind block. That vertical slot is the one that you're looking for there. A little bit of grease onto the main shaft. We'll bring this through the pinion gear, flat side facing out. Bring that down into your block. And the flat side actually had to face in, and that makes sense because that's going to ride up against the main gear. So disregard that last piece. The rounded side faces out, flat side faces in. Now we can install the handle, and we'll give it a test to make sure everything's working fine before we put that cover back on. We can turn it, and this is how your gearing will go on that reel. Now, of course, we had the anti-reverse dog disengaged because we didn't want to have any issue putting that in and merging it. So flip your switch back, and now we have that knock, knock, knock of that anti-reverse dog doing its job. Bring the cover plate back on. There's a little slot at the top there. Make sure that it seats properly. And then we can take our screw, put that in. And it's been kind of an interesting ride here. Since I started my channel, I get a lot of folks sending in older reels, like the Mitchell reels and the like, because they can't find folks to work on them today. That's a shame, because these reels certainly probably have outlasted the folks that are servicing them. Kind of an interesting thing. This reel itself is probably, I'm guessing, late 60s, early 70s. The 308s was a transition reel towards the end. The A models, not A8s, the A models were transition models when they moved their production to Taiwan. Well, even though this is a single pop to release, it doesn't mean it doesn't need to be serviced or at least looked at. So we'll show you how this comes apart, just in case, well, maybe you've taken it apart and you can't figure out how it goes back together again. The tags on this one face up. Underneath that you have a plastic cap. That's all you have on the top. And I was just checking. Sometimes you'll find a washer underneath here, sometimes you won't. In this case, we do not have one there. So this is acting as your drag pressure or your drag washer. So cap goes down. No lubrication necessary on that. Find the flat side to set this. Back up. And the idea on this one with the quick release is if you have a second spool with different line capacity, you can swap it out quickly. But the other idea here is that you can preset your drag tension, like it's set there, and you don't have to interfere with taking the knob off and ruin that preset in order to change your spool. Well, that's it. This is the Mitchell 308A. It's a beautiful reel in nice condition, near new condition, if not new, or unused at least. And that's the way this reel is supposed to work. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. Your efforts truly are appreciated. To everyone, enjoy the art of reel repair. Have fun on the water. Make sure that you take these reels fishing. That's what they're intended to do. And good luck in your catch. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.